welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. Robin Hoekstra is CEO at Outworx, based in Durban, South Africa. Outworx focuses on CX and back-office BPO solutions. Now, we've heard a lot about the impact of the coronavirus on CX companies globally recently, and much of the focus now is on where we will go next, the new normal, as most analysts are calling it. I've read many predictions about the new normal from American and European companies, but far less from African companies. Every CX company faced challenges when they had to suddenly move everybody into a work-from-home environment, but the lockdown was particularly strict in India and the Philippines, and this has created an opportunity for regions such as South Africa to appeal to new clients in the US that have traditionally looked to Asia for services. I called Robin to find out how the new normal looks from an African perspective. Okay, Robin, could you just briefly introduce Outworx to the listeners? Where are you based and what are your focus areas?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark. We based here in South Africa, down on the east coast in a town called Outworx, which is an area within the Durban district. We basically provide our clients with a safe pair of hands down here in South Africa. And Outworx is a people-centric, compliance-focused organization, striving to what we like to call our center of excellence. It's really who we are. We have focus on telecommunications, really in customer services and sales, media, financial services, insurance and retail. And within the retail space, customer service and a big back office contingent, medical staffing, quality assurance and compliance monitoring, including speech analytics. There's really, I suppose, broken down into three main areas: customer service, sales, and back office across multiple channels.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've been down to your neck of the woods. I met Skabenga the cat once.
Oh, wow. Okay. Who is Skabenga the cat down at the oyster box?
That's the cat that lives at the hotel, yeah. It wandered in off the streets one day and never left.
Yeah, it's still there, I think.
Yeah. I follow on Instagram, actually. Okay,
awesome.
So, I mean, how has the lockdown experience been in South Africa? I mean, both for your business, but even just personally as well. I mean, can you even go out to the shops still?
Well, I think personally, if I just look at the announcement that was made when the lockdown was announced and the national state of disaster was announced by our president, there was a huge frustration for me personally, just in initially getting out of the international travel routine. I mean, I generally travel to a different country every 4 to 6 weeks. I had concerns about the safety of my family, my friends, my staff, concerns about how we were going to protect our service delivery and business continuity. And I suppose mentally and psychologically, it was initially quite a big shock. It's something that we'd never broached before and something that we were not quite sure how we're going to attack. Luckily, I suppose, as entrepreneurs, my entrepreneurial brain took over, and supported by my partners and an amazing executive structure, we took immediate and decisive action to mobilize the business in a direction that we instinctively believed was the right direction. We just took steps that we thought would be the right steps to protect our business. And life under lockdown has been weird, I must be honest. I don't know how much you know about life in South Africa under the various levels of lockdown, but our government imposed what initially was what they called level 5 lockdown, which restricted any sort of operations to essential services only. That lasted a little while. They then relaxed it down to level 4 for a short while again, and a few more businesses were able to operate. And we're now down to level 3 from the 1st of June. And basically under level 3, pretty much everything's in essence back to normal from a business commercial operations point of view, outside of the fact that restaurants, pubs, gyms are not allowed to open yet. Cigarettes are still not able to be purchased. It's been deemed illegal to purchase cigarettes from the moment lockdown was announced until today. You still can't purchase cigarettes. Liquor was only able to be purchased from the 1st of June. So from this week, Monday, it was legal to buy, although people have been manufacturing pineapple moonshine and various other moonshine derivatives. So it's not been a lot of fun, but it's been quite entrepreneurial again as well. Exercise was restricted. Under level 4, we could only exercise from 6 till 9 in the morning. Under level 3, we can operate from 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening. We've had curfews under level 4, and those curfews have now in essence been lifted. But there's still permits required. And, there's moving between hotspots is still restricted to some extent. Social distancing has become a very big issue, sanitizing and, making sure that we wear masks in public. It's not a criminal offense yet to not wear a mask, but you will get stopped and you won't be allowed into most organizations or shops without your temperature being taken, or wearing a mask to cover your hand or your nose and mouth.
Yeah.
So it's been an odd experience. It's been quite surreal, I think, for most people. And more importantly for the kids, not going to school. Schools are only starting to trickle back now, and only some of the grades are starting to trickle back. But the youngsters, I think, have taken as much pain and pressure as the adults have done. I speak to my grandparents sometimes, and they always talk about the war, and I speak to my father, and he speaks about what happened during the war. And I think our children are going to talk about lockdown. I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter, and every now and then we speak and say, look, I think we're going to go and do this. We're going to go and do that. She says, well, Papi, we're under lockdown. We can't do that at the moment. It's been quite tough, I think, for them. And I think it'll be indelibly etched in their minds for the rest of their lives.
Which might end up changing consumer behavior eventually.
It could do. It could very well change some of the consumer behavior. Absolutely.
I mean, how about the contact centers then? I mean, how are you returning to some kind of normality and getting people back in the contact center? Has it completely changed, or will that depend on going to level 2, for example?
Well, under level 4, we had quite draconian restrictions. You could only really staff about a third of your normal workforce per facility. So per delivery center, 1/3 of the people could come back in, obviously with very specific social distancing requirements. Under level 3, they've almost allowed you 100% occupancy, provided the social distancing is observed. And social distancing of 1.5 meters per person or between people basically means you've got a seat one, miss one, seat one, miss one. So in essence, in a 1,000-seat facility, you could probably only staff 50%. Right. Where the congested areas are is around the locker areas, the common areas, how you route people through your building, and specifically in the dining areas and the canteens. That's really still quite a challenge. What we do and what the industry has done here is set up some templates for companies to follow. And a lot of those templates are around disclosure of comorbidity. So before anybody's allowed to come back to work, in our contact center industry anyway, they need to fill in a comorbidity declaration, which identifies their age, whether they've got any predetermined comorbidities like hypertension, whether they're more than 28 weeks pregnant, whether they've got diabetes, whether they've got cancer, and then a decision taken on the appropriateness of them returning to work or not, what extra precautions you may take for them being back in the office. As I say, everybody comes in, they get their temperatures tested before they're allowed in the building. They've got to sign a medical declaration every day before they come in. Have they been exposed to any COVID-19 active cases? We take their temperatures every 4 hours whilst they're at work. All the surface areas that they may touch are cleaned every 4 hours. We monitor their temperature during the day and record that and report it on a weekly basis. So I think the new normal is, how do we deal with the density, and how do we deal with the reality of people coming back into work, and psychologically a lot of people's fear in coming back to work. There's a lot of agents who are quite happy to come back and want the social interaction. There's other agents that are more than happy to stay at home. And then there are those agents that are undecided but are fearful in coming back. We have parents of staff who have phoned in to say, look, my daughter really wants her job, or my son really wants their job, but I can't allow them back in because they're nervous to come back in. So, we're dealing with a couple of those things. But I do believe that the way the call center industry in South Africa has approached social distancing, sanitizing, and the health and safety aspects, I think in most instances it's safer for people at work than it is at home. They're a lot more protected when they're in the offices with us than they are when they're at home on their own. For a lot of them, obviously, their living conditions are not suited for social distancing.
Was that like the group of the companies in this industry working together on those guidelines, or was that something that BPESA put together?
The national industry body in South Africa is called BPESA. It stands for the Business Process Enabling South Africa. It's quite a dynamic group of people from both the private sector and from operators around the country. People who are in charge of the various regions and who represent the operators in the various regions in South Africa. When this national state of disaster was announced, Bapesa very quickly put together a national crisis committee, and that crisis committee was responsible or charged with the responsibility of liaising between government and the operators to make sure that the operators could open and operate, that we could sustain service delivery, and that we were compliant with the regulations and made sure that we did not fall foul of the regulations. We had some quite interesting situations where the regulations that we were following were not necessarily carried out to the policing services on the ground. There were some confrontations early on where some of the operators were taken to task on the way they were operating and some of the services they were delivering. And Bapesa was very quick to react and to lobby the policing services and to lobby government to make sure that the operators were able to operate, specifically under level 5 with essential services, and then through the levels, level 4, level 3, and heading towards level 2 and 1, making sure that the industry was operating within the confines of the regulations and helping to amend the regulations in line with what needed to be done to protect this industry. So I think Bapesa took a real leading role in making sure that the contact center space in South Africa remained open and viable.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, yeah. And I mean, on that point of being economically viable, how does that work? I mean, because the business model clearly for a 1,000 seat contact center involves having 1,000 people in there. So moving forward, is it going to have to be the same size center? We'll have half of the people, but then you'll also have a hybrid mix of people working at home as well. I mean, is that how it has to work now?
Look, we've run the numbers, Mark, and I do believe that you can still make a profit. I think the one thing that businesses are going to have to consider is potentially relocating to cheaper sort of dollar per square foot rentals, or renegotiating existing rentals with landlords and trying to get them down to a lower cost per square foot. I do think historically the majority of us have centered around the prime retail areas, and those have obviously come at a really high cost per square foot. And I do think we'll see a bit of a move out into slightly less expensive jurisdictions and locations to try and retain the margin that has obviously been affected by the density. I'm hoping that these densities are going to be relaxed, and I think people are going to start becoming innovative with putting up sort of cubicles and sitting next to each other, but still protecting the social distancing from a physical barrier point of view. But we've run the numbers, and I think it is possible that provided you stay nimble, provided you approach these things correctly and have a blend between, for instance, work from home, some sort of virtual contact center environment, and work from office, it can still work. And I think South Africa is really well suited for that. It's something we haven't had to approach before. It's something that is upon us now. And I think South Africans are pretty creative, and I think we'll survive that. I really do. It has affected the commercial model. Let's not fool around about it. It definitely is going to impact the bottom line with the ability to put lower numbers of people in a building. Yeah. But I do think, there's already been, some of the landlords have been really amazing. We've heard stories of landlords relaxing the rentals over this COVID period, whether there's discounts or whether they've given them a holiday of payment, whether they've got to pay it back at a later stage or not. But there's a lot of initiative in trying to make sure that business survives in this country, and specifically this sector survives. There's been a lot of growth. There's been a lot of new contracts signed even during this COVID period.
Yeah, because of course there's some businesses are doing well about the fact that lots of people have got to stay at home. So I can imagine that there's some industries that are doing better. I mean, because obviously you've had to move a lot of people home. So how was that experience? Have you had to retrain people or get a lot of different new tools and stuff then?
I think we've had staff who've absolutely loved work from home. And we've got staff that have really struggled with it, if I'm honest. And for a lot of them, their living conditions really poses the single biggest challenge that they've got. They've never really had to provide a secure, isolated space for them to work in. They're very communal living and in many cases live in quite dense living environments. But, if I look around, new technology is being developed, will be developed. The USA and the UK have got very successful work from home environments. If I look at recruitment, if you assess the suitability of the people up front and get the right people in, and whether that's making sure that their living conditions are able to accommodate work from home, making sure that they have no criminal convictions, making sure that their credit is clear, making sure that there's a provable referencing capability to make sure that their behavior has been great over the period of time. It might be a slightly older group of people that work from home. Retraining, I don't think it's so much about retraining. I think it's more about selecting the right people at the outset. This has been thrust upon us, so most people went home, whether they were suitable or not, and those that were suitable fared slightly better than those that were not that suitable. And the people who really struggled, we brought back into the office earlier than the ones who preferred to stay at home, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and I mean, moving forward, all of the analysts have talked about this new environment as a new normal. And do you see that's like a fundamental part of the new normal for this industry, is that you might have a different kind of recruitment strategy then for these different types of worker?
I think we may have a slightly different recruitment strategy, Mark, and I think there'll be different communication tools. If I can just go back for a second, just to the way it worked at home, our networks, our big mobile networks, they struggled in the beginning with the congestion. They had about a 60% increase in demand almost overnight in mobile connectivity. They are now dealing with those things. But there is a lot of really good tech out there and a lot of really good technology that's being developed. If I look at the information I've been exposed to over the years, it's obviously heavy on tech. You can choose any acronym you like, really. Fourth Industrial Revolution, whether it's RPA, AI, automation, pick one. And I think there's a really good chance that COVID has pushed or at least prodded a few reset buttons. I think human relationships and interactions, emotional connections, empathy and thoughtfulness, a warm beating heart. Surely this is going to play a significant role to secure the loyalty of one brand over the other going forward. Does my service provider care about me with a capital M, or is it just about the money? And just for a while, maybe tech will be there to where the efficiencies are, but the protection and penetration of market share, I think, is going to begin with a personal touch again. People have been scaremongering about tech and virtualization and no longer having humans on the phone or in the seats of the call center. But I think for at least the next while, we're going to reconnect with the public. We're going to reconnect with our clients. And I think the human touch is going to reignite this sector. We're very confident that we're going to be around for a long time. And I think the sector is going to enjoy some really good growth in the coming years.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm at Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.